Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Red Legs Review Podcast with Dan Howard and Jack Ward. And we apologize. First of all, Dan, I had some technical difficulties last week and finally got the podcast up and rolling about Saturday. We actually recorded it last Sunday, and I didn't get it up on the website until Friday because a little... Actually, what happened, Microsoft was asking for my password and ID for some reason, and because I didn't give it to them, it shut down my Movie Maker program, which I used to put this podcast up on YouTube, and it was something so simple. I searched and searched for the answer. What's wrong? It kept giving me an error code. I searched and searched for hours, and finally I said, maybe I should just go ahead and put my password in and ID, and bingo! Everything worked.
You know, Microsoft, what are they? The $500 a share for their stock, and they couldn't just allow you just this one little bitty thing. They have to have your password and your mother's maiden name and a deed to your house and your firstborn child and all this other stuff. Hey, it's incredible. It really is. But you never know. You might be a Russian activist getting ready to hack into some computers. Oh, did he say that? I'm sorry.
Well... I don't think they care about that. They just want to know about you and what you're buying so they can send you countless advertising. Have you heard about this new search engine called Brave, put out by the guy from Firefox? You know, he was asked to resign. He started the program Mozilla and Firefox, and he was asked to resign because he was for this proposition, whatever, in California that gave... approval to the sanctity of marriage between a man and a woman. Since he was for that, his stockholders ousted him. Now he started a new internet search engine called Brave, and it's not trackable, and you cannot put ads on it, only the ones that he allows, and it's supposed to be really good. And Brave, I love the title of the internet search engine, Brave.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like 10 times faster than Internet Explorer or Firefox or any of those others. So I can't wait to upload that and give it a shot. Anyway, baseball season ended for the Reds. They ended on a low note. They looked like they were going to win that game against the Cubs Sunday and close out the second half of the season over 500. But nope. Raisel Iglesias had his worst outing of the season on the last day of the season. I think he was However, he had his Disney World tickets in his luggage and was thinking about something else when he pitched that last inning. But I can't fault Raisel. He had a great season for the Reds, and he was due for a hiccup.
Yes, he did. It was but I think, do you have any organ music? Do you have any the sad like church organ music or funeral music over there on your computer? Because, you know, you're a pastor of a church, I'm an assistant pastor of a church, and I feel like we need to preach the funeral for Cincinnati Reds baseball. Because...
I think I know why.
Back-to-back 90-loss seasons.
Yeah.
They've rewarded Bryan Price by giving him another year. I cannot...
Possibly 2 years.
That. I cannot You know, Sparky Anderson was fired after a 90-win season. But then again, Dick Wagner was an idiot. But what mystical power does Bryan Price have over Dick Williams and the Reds' upper-level management? You know, what does he have over them? What control does he have over them? They can't be happy. You can't be satisfied with what you just saw on the field this past year. Now, granted, the second half of the year was much better than the first, but the Chicago Cubs had a better second half of the year than the Reds. Were you aware of that?
Well, I would hope so. They won 710 games.
The first time since 1935 the Cubs won over 100 games. The first half of the Cubs season, they had a 602 winning percentage. The second half of the Cubs season, they had a 681 winning percentage. They were 53-35 in the first half of the year. Well, now 50-23 the second half. So actually, that percentage went up a little bit higher. But the Reds, you can't argue with it. 36 and 37 the second half of the year. Joey Votto was nuclear again in the second half. Hit over 400 since the All-Star break. Only the second person since 2004 to do that, and that was Ichiro Suzuki. So he's in really good company there. Votto would have had to win 0 for 8 Sunday to have his average drop below 400. That's how far above 400 he was for the second half of the year.
408.
Yeah, 408, yeah. If he would have strung together a pretty decent first 2 months of the season, I mean, we could have been talking about him being a 400 hitter. Do you think that we'll ever see a 400 hitter in Major League Baseball?
Well, interesting. I watched that thing on Ted Williams on the that network, and it talked about Ted Williams and how impossible it is and how Ryder said it'll never happen. I don't think it ever will, and I agree with one guy who said because of the sixth inning specialist, the seventh inning specialist, the eighth inning specialist, the ninth inning specialist, because you don't face the same pitcher more than twice, it's going to be tough, and I don't think it'll ever happen.
Memo to whoever wrote this, Joey Votto faced that same scenario the second half of the season and still hit 408.
And how many games was the second half?
That would have been
73.
73.
It's a long.
So
that would
still,
be, he would have to do that for 89 more games, which is possible, but not likely.
Well,
if anybody could do it,
yeah,
it'd be a guy like Votto who walks a lot,
mm-hmm.
doesn't swing at anything but strikes. I mean, he's a guy that's, if it could be done, somebody like that could do it. But I don't know. It's I don't think it's possible. I think the pressure. You remember when George Brett was batting 406 in August or late July?
Right.
And
That's what I was thinking of.
He developed a bad case of hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
Remember that? And the doctor said, "You're under stress. What do you do for a living?" And George Brett said, "What do you mean what I do for a living? I'm a baseball player. I'm trying to hit 400. The doctor said, "Oh, that could be it."
Well, I'm sure you heard the story too back in '61 when Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle both were making the chase to break Babe Ruth. I think Maris went down with a leg injury. I mean, not Maris, but Mantle went down with a leg injury, and the pressure got so severe on Roger Maris that his hair started falling out.
Yeah.
And it didn't help any with the commissioner of baseball then. Was it Ford Frick that was a big fan of, was actually knew Babe Ruth and said that if he hits, he's got to hit 61 in 154 games. If not, his record will have an asterisk, because that was the first year for 162 games. And I think he got to 54. He got to 60 in 154 games, but it was the last game of the 61 season when he got number 61, and it was an asterisk for quite some time. And I think Bowie Kuhn or some other commissioner decided, how ridiculous it was. I mean, he did it in the regular season, no matter how long the season was. So.
Well, that is there is stress, and people handle it differently. Ted Williams was batting .3996 on the last day of the season, and they were playing the Philadelphia Athletics in a doubleheader, and Williams, instead of sitting out, it would have officially been 400. You know the story. He goes out and plays and goes 6 for 8 and winds up
in a doubleheader.
406. A lot of pressure on Williams. He just was determined. He wanted to hit 400 and do it legitimately. So you got people like Ted Williams. I think Joey Votto's that type of hitter, determined. Tony Gwynn batted .394 in the strike year of 1990. What year was it? 94?
94, yeah.
He was hitting .394 when the strike was called. He might have hit 400. Rod Carew batted .388 one year.
Right.
But
I think the year that the Tony Gwynn in '94, I think that would have been a year that the Montreal Expos would have won the World Championship. They were that good, and there was a strike, and it cost them. And the fans of baseball never really forgave, or the Montreal fans never really forgave baseball over that episode, because they were by far the best team in the majors that year. I mean, they had Moises Alou, Larry Walker, I think Andres Galarraga. a very young Pedro Martinez pitcher. And I because after that, baseball never did come back to Montreal. The fans never came back to Olympic Park to watch the Expos play, and which is sad because I always enjoyed watching baseball north of the border. We get it with Toronto, but it seems like there needs to be another Canadian team in baseball. Actually, two more. I think Vancouver could handle one, even though their close proximity with Seattle would make a natural rivalry there between a Vancouver team and a Seattle team. But who's to say? Maybe baseball expand, maybe it'll contract. I know you've talked about it should contract.
Yeah, I think baseball is getting too diluted with arms. Baseball is about pitching, and you get your pitching diluted. No wonder tonight's game against Baltimore, Toronto, they've hit over 500 home runs combined. You talk about sitting back for the 3-run homer. You're going to see that tonight.
And neither one of them played the Reds this year.
Which the Reds gave up, 245 home runs?
About 16,380 home runs this year. And half of them to the Chicago Cubs.
Well, how come we got away from Bryan Price so quickly? You said you disparaged him greatly. The Reds made a move to bring him back for this year, an option, for 17, and he's got an option for 2018. And I've talked to a couple people besides you that have said that's a horrible move. But you got to look at it this way. Right now, the Reds are not actually. I think the Reds have moved past rebuilding. I think they are building now towards something. And I think that do you really want to bring in a top flight manager for next year's team? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, forget that argument. Do you really want to bring in somebody that you could set up for failure that's really good? Yeah. Okay, forget that argument. Let's see. I'm trying to come up with a good reason to keep that the Reds kept him.
Now,
I think it's familiarity with the young players and not wanting to shake them up and some continuity. I think the players like Bryan Price. I think the pitchers like the new pitching coach. You had an interesting stat. The Reds went, 38-40 under...
38-40 with the new pitching coach. Well, that was Mac Jenkins, who replaced Mark Riggins on the 4th of July.
Well, you know well as I do that it was Lorenzen's return, Iglesias going to the bullpen, and DeSclafani's return that turned the pitching staff around. You know as well as I do. That's,
right. Dan Straley had a very good year.
And a good second half. He won 10 games in the second half. And Brandon Finnegan pitched better in the second half.
Right.
And actually finished.
He lowered his earned run average to 3.98.
He actually finished under 4. So, you can say you'll want to about changing managers, but, Dan, I think the general manager has more of an effect on a team than the manager. The general manager is responsible for getting the players to the manager. And I know the manager he can cause problems in a clubhouse if he's too regimental or he can be too lax. But basically the manager controls the clubhouse and makes pitching changes and decides who to bring north for the regular season as he makes his cuts in the pitching staff. Because you pretty much know who your regulars are going to be. It's the pitching that makes all the difference. And I thought Bryan Price did the best he could. I know we talked about the players and pitchers he brought with him after spring training were horrible. But really, did he have much other choice with all the injuries? So we have to give him a pass there. Then we got to think, when he finally got some talent, the Reds showed they could compete. So I think that's why he was rehired. They want to keep continuity. It's not the fact that they think Bryan Price will get them over the hump, but it's the fact that, is the 415 heading through now?
Yeah. In case you're wondering, I live in a little border town called Kermit, West Virginia, and we have a main hub, a main line for freight going through the town that goes from Detroit, Michigan to Atlantic seaboard, and it runs right through the middle of Kermit, West Virginia. And that's why occasionally you'll hear a train whistle.
Hey, you could hop a ride to Detroit.
Not every 10 minutes, actually, the way it has been recently.
That would get on my nerves. But anyway, I know how you
don't pay attention to it. I mean, I'm used to it. I've lived in this town for almost 30 years, and I've heard it several times a day, and it really don't bother me. I went to a hotel room one time and couldn't sleep that night because it's too quiet.
So in the future, you brought your little recording of a train going through town.
Oh, certainly, yeah. It's really relaxing and very peaceful.
Slept like a baby.
Except when you hear the horn, it brings you out of bed. But other than that, hearing the train go by and the noise of the wheels and all that, but it can be relaxing.
Well,
like a rain.
Okay.
Like sleeping in the rain.
Sleeping in the rain next to a little stream. But anyway, I woke up listening to a stream. My wife said, let's try this radio with a stream. And boy, it was realistic because I woke up the next morning in a puddle of water. And
forgot to put the depends on the night before, Jack?
Yeah, you can read between the lines there. Or read between the sheets. Anyway, that was the last of that radio.
Hey, sold it for $50 on eBay, right?
No, I don't think it was able to be sold. It was bursted.
To some man named Anwar, right?
But anyway, we have the playoffs starting tonight. Of course, the Reds are not in it. Bryan Price will be back.
What a shock.
There's nothing we can do about it. The Reds finished 68-94. What was surprising to me is the Reds finished last in the National League, tied with San Diego. I thought the Braves were a lock to finish last, and then the Braves catch fire at the end of the season and pass the Reds up. The agony of agonies.
The Braves actually had a better record in the second half than the Reds.
Freddie Freeman was unconscious. And another reason the Reds were better, of course, was Joey Votto. Brandon Phillips hit well. Adam Duvall hit, 10 home runs in the second half. He didn't totally collapse and got over 100 RBIs. What a season by Duvall.
Yes, that was a great season. And, Brandon Phillips quietly had a pretty good season. Batted .291, 11 homers, 64 RBIs, 34 doubles, led the team in doubles.
I thought Brandon played...
Actually tied with Joey Votto with doubles. Votto finished with 326 average. That's just unbelievable. I'm going through the list right now. Eugenio Suarez started hot, but he cooled off tremendously. He finished with a 248
But he
average.
finished with 21 homers and 70 RBIs. You'll take that from your third baseman anytime.
Yes, definitely. Needs to bring his batting average up a little bit, in my opinion. But
And what else?
Basically, his first full year.
And what else does he need to bring down?
I need to bring down the strikeouts.
Thank you. I mean, I don't care how much they strike out, but that bugs you. I mean,
it really bothers me. It bothers me.
What about Adam Duvall?
Joey Votto. See, Votto, I think, had close to 100 strikeouts around the All-Star break, so he brought his strikeouts down, and look what he did. It was just incredible. Batted over 400 in the second half. Actually, since I think he batted 380 since the 1st of June. It's just unreal. That's what happens when you make contact. If you put the ball in play instead of just striking out and then dragging your bat back to the dugout. In fact,
stats show that if you strike out every time you bat, you won't get any hits.
That's exactly right. And Adam Duvall led all Reds pitchers in strikeouts. Adam Duvall struck out 164 times, and I know people are yelling at the radio or whatever the device they're listening to, but Duvall isn't a pitcher. Well, no, he's not, but the Reds' leading strikeout pitcher had 162, and that was Dan Straley. But at least it wasn't 200 strikeouts.
No, that honor goes to Chris Davis of the Orioles, and another guy Chris Davis struck out well over 200 times, and somebody else did too. I can't remember the name. But we say goodbye at the end of the 2016 season to A-Rod. Of course, he left in the middle of, July or something like that. Mark Teixeira of the Yankees played his last game. And Who else? There's one other guy played. Oh yeah, for the Phillies, the first baseman for the Phillies,
Ryan Howard.
Ryan Howard.
Cousin Ryan.
He played his last game. Why did he retire? What is he that old?
I would say he's still having problems with his feet. You know, because he blew out his Achilles a few years ago in the divisional series, and just wasn't the same player after that.
I was surprised when it was his last game. And, of course, David Ortiz has left. He'll be in the playoffs.
Right.
I'm so
and
glad.
And, of course, the legend, and of course, we're talking about a legendary
Let's talk about Ortiz. Let's talk about Ortiz first before you get to that guy.
Okay, go ahead.
Ortiz, I'm so glad that we are done with his tour, Goodwill Tour. Just got tired of this guy being ranted and raved about because he's so wonderful. Yeah, he had a great year. Where has he been the rest of his years? I mean, this is probably the second or third best, well, probably about the fourth best year he's ever had. He's had some great numbers. Don't take me wrong. He is a great
player. 3
player.
World Series rings, Jack.
A great
Remember
clutch
that.
hitter. He did not strike out 100 times. I know you'll be pleased with that.
Yes.
And his last season was the best of any guy for his final season. Led the league in slugging. Incredible. Led the league in ops, which is unbelievable. And he goes into the playoffs as one of the best clutch hitters of all time. So we say adieu to Ryan Howard, Mark Teixeira, and A-Rod. And go ahead.
And a legendary broadcaster said goodbye Sunday. And I'm referring to none other than the great Dick Enberg.
Oh, yeah, Dick Enberg. Yes, yeah.
You wasn't expecting that, were you?
I forgot about that. Dick Enberg was great. I love Dick Enberg.
Yeah, and some other guy named Vin Scully. But anyway, let's talk about Dick Enberg. You know, we grew up listening, of course, both of us were kind of athletic. We were fans of all sports. You know, you had Dick Enberg, who did football for NBC and then CBS. I think later did some work for ESPN. Of course, Vin Scully was, you know, he strictly was baseball. I mean, I don't remember him ever doing a football game, do you?
He wasn't good enough. Go ahead.
You don't like Vin Scully, and I like the guy.
I love Vin Scully. I love his character, his personality. He's just not the best baseball announcer of all time. He's not.
But Dick Enberg did it all practically.
He was great.
You know, I'm going to throw a name out, Kurt Gowdy. You know, Kurt Gowdy did Major League Baseball Game of the Week. He was a Boston Red Sox announcer, and you can tell it in the last out of the 75 World Series because his voice changed dramatically when Carl Yastrzemski made the last out in the game. And Cincinnati has won the World Championship. You know, there was no excitement in his voice. You could tell he was very, very distraught over the fact that the Red Sox had lost again another World Series. But you know, Enberg, just Super Bowls, NCAA championships. You know, he in our era, he's Joe Buck. You know, nowadays, it's, you know, whenever there's a big game to be played, Joe Buck's there. You know, either Joe Buck and Troy Aikman in football and baseball. It was Joe Buck and Ken McCarver. I don't know who his partner is now. Is it Psycho Steve, whatever his name is?
I have no idea.
He used to play for the White Sox.
But he's working with the Red Sox now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know who works with Joe Buck. Dick
Enberg he just did it all. I mean, he would do Wimbledon with Bud Collins and John McEnroe. And now Dick Enberg at 81, and I did not know the man was 81 years old. But he just did everything.
Well, he was a wonderful guy, and as Vin Scully was a wonderful man too. But I think Dick Enberg was just a better announcer than Vin Scully because Dick Enberg just actually broadcast and described the game and not everything else going on around. But anyway, I love Vin Scully as a person, and he's okay as a broadcaster. But let me tell you what's heartbreaking for this man, and I watched his last speech, is he's been doing the Dodgers since 1950. He started in 1949 with another team, didn't he? With the Giants or something. But
I
anyway,
think so, yeah.
he's
His
been
favorite team was the Giants growing up.
68 years. Now, how can this guy just walk away from that? I mean, I worked for the Postal Service for 35 and a half years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very difficult for me to walk away from a job I hated, much less walking
but you
away
didn't exactly be drug away kicking and screaming either.
No, but it was difficult to adjust. And no, I loved my job, loved it very, and all the people, I loved them very much. It was difficult. Vince Scully, I can't imagine working till your whole life has been Dodger baseball. And when he closed out, he said, for the last time, everyone, thanks for listening and have a great afternoon. Said like he always says. And he gave a little speech before that was very touching. I thought, I just feel for him. I know inside he's thinking, what do I do now? But you've got to come to a point where you've got to walk away. And I respect him for walking away, being the same Vin Scully from 1949 to 2016. I give him credit. He never changed. And that's the beauty of this man. And he's a wonderful human being, a wonderful man. And I admit I'm going to miss him because he's consistent. He's always been there for us. All my life, yours too. And I just feel for him, how's he going to make it through life, the rest of life? I know is a very spiritual man, and I know he has faith in God, and I guess he's just going to enjoy baseball again. Things he never got to enjoy a summer like we have. You think about that. He never got to enjoy a family vacation during the summer. He never got to, he's too old now to do some of those things. I just wonder how he's going to adapt. But I just kind of felt sorry that this is over for him. And when you retire, you walk out the door for that last time, and the first thing you think is, what have I done? What have I done? Because you can't go back and change it. It's too late.
Well, one thing about it, you got out at an age, 58, almost 59, and you got to enjoy. You can enjoy the remaining days of your life, which I pray that's several years from now. But Vin Scully's 88, 89 years old.
I think he's 90.
There's not a lot of days. There's more days behind him than there are in front of him. I can tell you that.
Let's see, started.
And I hope he doesn't turn out to be like
he's 89.
Paul Bear Bryant. Bryant coached his last game. I think it was the Liberty Bowl back in 1982, and never lived a month afterwards.
Well, Vin doesn't smoke Pall Malls, so he should be okay.
No, that's true. that is true. And a thought crossed my mind yesterday as I was thinking about Vin Scully. Been with the Dodgers for 67 years. Okay, 1940. I started 1950, 49 or 50. Radio was still in its golden era. Television was just beginning. There was no such thing as internet. There was no such thing as cell phones, although the technology was there. The technology was created basically during World War II. The big radios that they would carry in combat and stuff like that, that worked off cellular not systems, but the technology. And basically, the cell phone you have in your pocket is nothing more than just basically a high-priced walkie-talkie. But the technology was there, but nobody had phones. Nobody had car phones. Most people never had electric come, in 1950 when Vin Scully took over. But the one thing that really struck me, that the modern era of Major League Baseball began in 1901. That was 115 years ago. Over half that time, Vin Scully worked for the Dodgers.
That is what's incredible. He has seen everything.
Right. He called Jackie Robinson. He did Jackie Robinson's play-by-play. He did Willie Mays' play-by-play.
I know.
Just to think about just the bridge between the older generation and the younger generation is a man named Vin Scully. He probably knew people that we listened to a lot. You used to have XM radio with the radio classics. I still have XM radio, and I listen to Jack Benny and the Jack Benny program, the Red Skelton program, a lot of Abbott and Costello, which we were talking about that earlier. I heard Who's on First, the routine earlier this morning. Vin Scully probably knew those people.
Oh, yeah. Being in L.A., he knew a lot of people like that. A lot of movie stars, probably. But you got to realize, too, in 1949, there was no networks yet.
Right.
NBC was in NBC West at a NBC East and NBC West, but they weren't really a network.
Because they couldn't quite figure out how to get the wire across those big old hills called the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, so he was there at the dawn of television.
Right. There was no such thing as satellite communication.
No.
Most people got their news from newspapers or radio.
Yeah. He was there when Bobby Thompson hit the shot heard around the world.
He was doing the television part of it. That game was televised. We all hear of Russ Hodges' classic call, "The Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant," which, believe it or not, is owned by one individual, and I know that individually personally. He's a man by the name of John Miley, lives in Evansville, Indiana. He's got a thing called the Miley Collection, which I've seen his collection. He has a lot of old radio calls, and I'm sure Vin Scully is prominent in his collection, along with Dick Enberg, because not only did Enberg do San Diego Padre games, he also did California Angel games before they became the Orange County Angels. But he was showing me some of the things, and he actually showed me an old wire recorder, which was pre-magnetic tape, that they would run. It was like a recorder on these spools, and it would run through a little, for lack of a better word, contraption that recorded the voice. And a lot of times you'll hear a lot of the grainy stuff. If you listen to a lot of the old stuff, you'll hear some grainy, like audio fading up and down and stuff like that. Well, it was recorded on a wire recorder, and that's what caused all that. And it was amazing. I asked the guy, and this guy has been featured prominently on several radio stations, WLW for one. ESPN did a little thing on him back about 20 years ago. And when I had talked to him, I asked him a question. I said, if you could put a price on this, what would it be worth? He said, Dan, of all the people that's talked to me, and he named off like ESPN, it wasn't MLB Network, but like all the radio stations he'd been on, the TV stations he'd been on. I think Fox, had something on him. He said, of all the questions that people have asked me, nobody's ever asked me that question.
What was his answer?
What could you put a value on that? I mean, how could you put a value on it? I just asked him to will it to me when he died. Yeah. But, I grew up listening to radio a lot, baseball games on radio, because we only got the Reds, 30-some times a year on television. I mean, it was a treat when we got to watch them on television. And now we take it for granted because, you have the MLB package, I have DirecTV, that we get 145 Reds games every year.
Yeah. Never would have dreamed of that. We would have been excited.
Who would have thought? Could you imagine watching 145 Big Red Machine games of the 75, 76 era?
No, I couldn't. Have been simply marvelous. Well, anyway, let's go over the playoff predictions. But first, the Reds' prospects for next year. Their season has ended. It was a bad season, but a good finish. They finished 36-37, their last 73 after the All-Star break. What do you think about the Reds next year and their? You think they've gone from rebuilding to built or building?
Well, I was listening to Marty Brennaman's comments during Sunday's game, and he pretty much echoed the same sentiments that you did, that they're not necessarily rebuilding. The rebuilding process is over. It's a tough process. We've seen it. This is about the fourth time we've experienced it in our lifetimes. Meaning going back to the late '60s, and then you've got the early '80s. And then of course the entire decade of the first decade of the 2000s. It's a tough process. It's a hard process. But Marty Brennaman made a comment that expect 7 more wins next year. And I thought, Well, that puts them at 71. That'd be 71. Is that right? No, I'm sorry. It'd be
75
wins. 75. Yeah, there's 68-94 this year. For some reason, I was thinking there was 64 and 98. But he said, don't expect them to compete with the Dodgers. I mean, with the Cubs yet. Don't look for it. He said if they go 500, that would be a successful year. And I thought, well, we've had Bryan Price now for 3 seasons. 86 losses the first season, 98 losses last year, 94 this year. And had it not been for a mid-season turnaround, we could have been looking at the second 100-loss season. In fact, we were expecting the second 100-loss season in franchise history.
Yeah, we were.
It didn't happen. This is the first time the Reds have had back-to-back 90-loss seasons since they lost 90 games in 5 consecutive seasons from 1930 to 1934. There was a bright spot because their second World Series appearance came in 1939, and their second World Championship came a year later in 1940. But if you look at the 1930s, they were 59 and 95 and 30, 58 and 96 and 31, 60 and 94 and 32, 58 and 94 and 33, 52 and 99 and 34. Then the wins started progressing a little bit more, 68 and 85 and 36, 74 and 80 and 30. I'm sorry, 66 and 85 and 35, 74 and 80 and 36. They went back to 98 losses. They had 98 losses again in 1937, and then it started turning around. They had a new manager. They hired a fellow by the name of Bill McKechnie. 82 and 68 and 38, 97 and 57 and 39, 153 in 1940 with the World Championship. And I mean, mind you, did I mention they had a new manager?
New manager.
Chuck Dressen, bless his heart, was a great manager for the Brooklyn Dodgers, but he did not do much for the Reds because he was part of the 90-loss seasons that the Reds had.
And that was only 154 games, so you lost 90 games in. You had a bad season.
You had a bad year. You certainly did.
Well, managers, well, that's the jury's out. What effect do managers have? Well, then you got Joe Madden, who all he's done is win 97 and 103. He's averaged
not
100.
Not just Joe Madden, of course.
Yeah, so that kind of.
I mean, look at Francona in Cleveland. Look what Buck Showalter's done in Baltimore.
True.
Now, to Showalter's defense, he's not exactly taken teams to the World Series. It's the manager after he left that took the teams to the World Series. He was the manager of the New York Yankees up to 95.
95, yeah.
Joe Torre takes over 96. 4 World Championships in 5 years, 6 years? He becomes the manager of the Texas Rangers. He leaves. Ron Washington takes over. World Series in 2010 and 2011. I mean, it's just incredible. And there's many other instances you can point out. I don't have Showalter's managerial career in front of me, but those are 2 right off the top. Did he not manage the Toronto Blue Jays before Cito Gaston took them to the World Series in 91-92?
Yeah. No, I don't think he managed then. He'd been too young.
Okay.
He's only 60 years old right now, 61. He's my age. But anyway, there I go saying anyway again. The Reds, I think Marty's right. I'd say about 75 to 80 wins. That would be a great season for them. And to see some of these guys mature, and you never know what can happen. The Reds might catch lightning in a bottle and just completely get hot at the start and finish hot. So we'll have to see. Now, let's have your fearless playoff forecast. What's it called? Prognostication. Your fearless playoff forecast.
Okay. Let me
Tonight
get back to the Showalter point, okay?
Go ahead.
As the 4:45 rolls through a little bit early. Showalter managed the Yankees from 92 to 95.
This has been a 2-train show.
Well, yeah, definitely.
We've been on 39 minutes and counting.
Showalter managed the Yankees from 92 to 95. He managed the Arizona Diamondbacks from 98 to 2000. Remember, 96, they go to the World Series under Joe Torre. 2001, they go to the World Series. And then he manages the Texas Rangers from 2003 to 2006, and then Ron Washington takes over, and then it's a few years later, but they become they won a couple of pennants under Ron Washington. And now Baltimore Orioles. You know, Ron Washington the Atlanta Braves are talking to Ron Washington about a managerial position.
Well,
we still want to give that Brian, whatever his name is, the no-name manager of the Atlanta Braves, a shot, but he's still considered interim.
I think the Reds should hire Buck Showalter and then fire him after 2 seasons and win a World Series.
That's right.
It sounds to me like the Orioles need to get rid of him after this year. But anyway, you've got the Orioles and the Blue Jays tonight. Well, you've got Bumgarner, and I'm sorry, that's tomorrow night. You've got Chris Tillman, 16-6 against Marcus Stroman, 9-10.
You know, Toronto's playing at home. Toronto really doesn't have the pitching staff, but they like to bludgeon people to death. I'm hoping, my preference, I'd like to see Baltimore win it. But could you imagine a Toronto-Texas rematch after what happened last year in the divisional series, and then, of course, the little dust-up they had earlier this season that Jose Bautista got clocked.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
By Ruff and Odor.
Ruff and Odor, yeah.
It's going to be really interesting.
Rougned Odor.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Rougned Odor, go ahead.
Rougned Odor, yeah.
Okay, so you got the Giants and the Mets. You're picking Baltimore. I'm picking Baltimore because I think Marcus Stroman's going to get lit up tonight. Chris Tillman is a much better pitcher, even though he hasn't pitched that well in the second half. I think he's going to be ready to go tonight, and I think that you've got the Baltimore bullpen. You've got the kid at the end who hasn't blown a save and a 0.55 ERA, Zach Britton. I think Baltimore's going to win that game, and I don't think Stroman.
Well, you know what that means, don't you? Toronto will win it 15-1.
Yeah, I usually have the snake bite. Okay.
Kiss of death.
Kiss of death. San Francisco against the Mets at New York. You've got Bumgarner.
It's got to be the Giants.
Bumgarner against Syndergaard.
They've won it every other year. Why not this year?
I think that's going to end. I think the Mets are going to win. I think Jay Bruce is going to strike out 4 times, but the Mets are going to win. And the Mets, despite the fact they've got a left-handed batting lineup against Bumgarner, I think Syndergaard is going to pitch a great ball game, and the Mets are going to win with their home crowd.
Here's how it's going to turn out. I'm picking the Giants. You're picking the Mets. Jay Bruce is at bat. Runner at second. Nobody on first. Bottom of the 9th inning. No score. Bruce strikes out. The ball gets away from the catcher. Bruce makes it to first base. The guy scores from second. Mets win 1-0.
May happen. You know, Jay Bruce wound up with 33 homers and 99 RBIs. He had 8 homers.
He had 33 homers and 98 RBIs when he left the Reds.
He had 25 homers and 80 RBIs when he left the Reds.
But it made the way for Scott Schebler.
Yeah, Schebler, we forgot to mention him. He had a fine season. I think he did well in his opportunity.
Yes, he did. He took great advantage of it.
Okay, now you've got...
Here's the thing, going back to Schebler. In 54 games, Schebler was 56 for 190 with a 295 batting average, 7 doubles, 1 triple, 8 home runs, 32 RBIs.
After he came back.
Those are Cal Daniels numbers, people.
After he came back.
After the Bruce trade.
Okay. How many RBIs? 32? 8 homers?
8 homers, 32 RBIs.
He outperformed Bruce by a mile.
Yeah.
I knew Bruce wouldn't do well in New York. I mean, he tries too hard. He gets in these slumps where he's just awful. And hopefully he can turn it around next year, but he'll probably be with a different club.
I think he'll be wearing a Red Sox uniform next year.
Well, I hope he does well where he's at. I have nothing against him.
Or maybe a Texas Ranger uniform.
I think it was time for the Reds to cut him loose. Okay, and he had a great first half, and the Reds managed to get at least something for him. Texas against Baltimore. Then you got the Red Sox against Cleveland. Who you got coming
That's
out?
That's going to be an interesting series because the last time they met up in the playoffs was the 2007 League Championship Series, and the Indians jumped out to a 3-1 lead and couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
Now this year, it's Terry Francona against his former team.
Oh yeah.
And as much as I like Big Papi, I got to stick with the Ohio boys, going with the Indians.
Well, I would pick the Indians, but they've got a decimated starting pitching staff, and they're going to start Trevor Bauer, and I just don't think the Indians have the pitching to keep up with the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox will win that series in 5. You've got Texas against, we think, Baltimore, or you think Toronto. Who did you pick, Baltimore or Toronto? You picked Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah.
Texas, Baltimore. Texas has the home field advantage, of course.
Yeah, you got to give it to the home team. I mean, Texas has been there before. But as much as I like Buck Showalter has not been a very good manager in the postseason.
Well, I think he's going to turn it around. I think Baltimore's going to beat Texas because Baltimore has a better bullpen. Texas has gotten by with smoke and mirrors all year. They've done quite well with smoke and mirrors.
And the division's weaker. Now, I'll give you that. The Western Division's weaker, and I may change my mind on that. I mean, as much as I'd like to see Baltimore do it, so I'd love to see a Baltimore-Cleveland League Championship Series. I think that would be great for baseball.
I think you're going to have a Boston-Baltimore League Championship Series, and I think the Red Sox are going to win and go to the World Series. Okay, now the National League. Go ahead. What?
I'd like to see the Indians get to the World Series because I do like Terry Francona.
I know who you like. I know you like. What are you predicting? What are you going to lay on the line right now?
Personal preferences aside, you got to give the nod to Boston. Although I really think that Terry Francona will outmanage John. What's his name?
Farrell.
John Farrell. I really, because Farrell was he the manager in 2013 when they won the World Series?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so he has the experience, and I take that back. So yeah, you know what? I guess I'll put my heart on my sleeve and just say, you know what? I think it's going to be Boston.
You're putting that in writing now.
You say Red Sox. Red Sox winning the ALCS.
We'll go back and listen to this again, just to make sure you don't try to weasel out of these picks.
No, I'll stand by my predictions.
Okay.
So Baltimore over Toronto tonight. I've got the Mets over the Giants. No, I've got the Giants over the Mets. I'm sorry, Giants over the Mets.
Okay, so you got L.A. against Washington. Washington home field advantage.
Nationals.
Yeah, I got the Nationals.
By far, Dusty Baker.
Okay, Chicago against...
Dave Roberts did a great job as a player, really good job as a manager, never managed in the postseason. Dusty's been there before, even though he's not had much success, especially with the Reds coming out of the first round. He's never took a team past the first round since probably when he managed the Giants back in 2002 or 2003. No, he managed the Cubs in 2003. Took them to the League Championship Series. But aside from that, I got to give the nod to Dusty.
Dusty took the Giants to the 2002 World Series. Remember?
Right, but the next year, the Giants let him go, and he took over the Cubs and took the Cubs, to within 5 outs of the World Series.
Yeah. Okay.
And don't blame Bartman on it. It was bad defense that cost them.
Speaking of the Cubs, they're playing the Giants. I think they're going to be playing the Mets. What about the Cubs?
Whoever wins tomorrow night's going to lose to the Cubs. I think the Cubs will go on to the League Championship Series.
I think they will. I think they're going to. But we don't know. The Mets have... Well, they're so decimated by injuries, you can't say they got a great starting staff. They got Syndergaard, and that's about it now.
That's about it.
Okay. Well, they've got the old man. I don't think he's going to do very well in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. 87 years old, Bartolo Colon.
But he may. You never know. Okay, you've got L.A. against Washington. We got Washington. Now you got the Cubs against the Nationals. The Nationals, who's going to win that series?
Cubs.
Really?
I mean,
really?
I think the Cubs get to the World Series for the first time since 1945.
Really? I'm picking the Nationals. I'm picking Dusty Baker to take the Nationals to the World Series.
I don't think the Cubbies screw this up I don't think they screw it up at all.
Remember,
I think they'll be dancing in the streets come October the 2nd or the 1st of October. Actually, probably by October 30th, by Halloween weekend, I think the Cubs will be dancing in the street. All of Chicago will be celebrating their first World Championship since 1908. And how do you get your championship? Now just leave us the heck alone and let's move on.
Remember Marty Brennaman's book on the Cubs, verse 1, chapter 1?
Mm-hmm.
If they can screw up a good thing, they will.
They will. They certainly will. But I just don't think, I think they're just too loaded. I think they've got the offense, they've got the defense, they've got the pitching, they've got everything you need. They're solid up the middle, they're solid on the sides. I think last year was just a taste of things to come for the Cubs. They were beaten by a very, very good New York Mets team last year. In fact, they were swept in 4 games. That's not happening this year. I think the league championship series will go down to the 6 or 7 game before the Cubs pull it up because Cubs, the World Series, the road to the World Series in the National League goes through Wrigley Field.
I would pick the Cubs, but Jake Arrieta has been awful. He can't find the strike zone. He's going to get roughed up, and I think his start will be the key start. I think the Nationals have Scherzer, who's been great. They've got that other kid that's been great. And I don't know if their phenom is going to pitch. Well, I wish I could remember names. Who's the kid, the big right-hander that was the number 1 draft choice that's a little bit injured right now? Got a forearm problem. Anyway, he won his first 13 starts or something like that.
Right.
You're no better than I am.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of his name.
Anyway, I think the Nationals have, they've got the starters. Now, the only question is, if the Cubs get the lead in their bullpen, I think the Cubs, I think Rondon can be scored upon. The other,
but you've got to roll this Chapman.
You've got Chapman who cannot be. If they get to the 9th and are behind, of course the Nationals are going to lose. But I just think the Nationals are going to find a way to pull it out for Dusty. Now I've got a World Series between the Red Sox and the Nationals, and I've got the Nationals winning the World Championship and Dusty finally getting his first ring.
I think that Bryce Harper will be walked considerably, much like Joe Madden did during the regular season. I think the Cubs swept them in a 4-game series.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that they're going to let the rest of the National League. I think who they got? Daniel Murphy, who led the National League in hitting.
Second in the National League.
Oh, that's right. DJ LeMahieu
edged him out by 1.
But
Murphy's been a little banged up, but I think, and so has Bryce Harper. But I think Harper, he remembers how the Cubs treated him early. What was that, April or May? That series that really got Harper off to a. He has not gotten over that series when they walked him so much, and he started chasing pitches after that, and he's wound up having a terrible season. And Bryce Harper can refocus now, get his game back, and I think he's going to have a big series against the Cubs if it comes down to that. I think he's going to have a big series against the Dodgers too.
You're talking about Steven Strasburg, wasn't you?
Strasburg. Is he going to be pitching, or is he still got it nursing a back?
I have no idea. I've not heard anything one way or the other whether he's going to be pitching or not. But if he can, he will.
If he's pitching, then
there's no doubt about that. Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker will use him. Of course, people talk about how Dusty Baker killed the Mark Pryor, but Dusty Baker uses pitchers. He don't abuse pitchers. He uses pitchers. And Dusty Baker's old school. I mean, back when Dusty played, they pitched every 3rd or 4th day. It didn't matter. Your arm hurt or not, you're out there pitching. And I think if Strasburg can pitch, he will pitch.
Well, the Rangers, I'm looking at the probable pitchers. They've not even announced who's going to start their opening game of the playoffs.
Right.
Talk about a team that is strange. I mean, that's kind of weird.
I don't think Toronto. I don't think Texas will make it very far.
Well,
you've got Red Sox Nationals. I'm going with the Red Sox Cubbies, and I think the Cubbies will be dancing in the street come October 30th. I don't think the World Series will make it to November. I think the Cubbies will win it 5 games. I'll give them 5. Because they split in Boston, and the Cubbies sweep at Wrigley.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
I mean, write those down because we can always go back to this broadcast to catch you up in your lies.
Right.
But we think it's going to be very interesting playoffs. Sad that the Reds aren't in it, but we can still have fun with it. Baseball is still the greatest game, and we'll be watching tonight and every night.
We'll be commenting on this every week between now until the season ends, and then we'll wrap it up for the winter and go to the house.
There's going to be 4 games played on Friday. That's when retirement is good.
Yeah.
And
now, the unfortunate thing about it is the first game of the Cubs, whomever they play, Friday night will be 9 o'clock.
I know, for working people, that's awful. For me, hey, it's great.
But then again, this isn't a Boston-New York game where a 9 o'clock game will wind up going till about 7 o'clock the following morning.
Well, we hope it does. It doesn't matter to me. But anyway, okay, we got to wrap things up. We've gone almost an hour.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sure people have been riveted by their device while they've been listening to this Titanic broadcast. Anyway, I've got to bring my music up here. While I'm bringing that up, say something.
Something.
Say something interesting.
Something interesting.
All right, that's all we can ask for. That's great. Always.
Hey, we made millions of bucks doing that on vaudeville.
Well, Dan, thanks a lot. Great show. And we're going to wrap it up and get out of here. And we will see you guys next time on Red Legs Review Podcast.